No, I was talking to another buddy, but Nino, he'll
Oh,
be.
okay, gotcha. I
Yeah.
thought it might have been Pat when our power went out.
Oh no, he was texting me earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe, we had a power outage today.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah? How
Hmm.
long?
Like 12 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Well, when I called ComEd, they said the automated message is like, "Yep, everybody's calling us. We know there's an outage. We'll have it
He's
back
in the
by."
wait. He's in the waiting room right now.
Okay, great.
Should we just bring him in?
Yeah, I mean we're live, so.
Nice.
All
All right. All right. We're gonna let Clint in. Here we
right,
Cool,
go.
cool.
all right, let's get an audio from everybody.
Check, check.
Hello, hello.
Howdy, Clint.
Hey, Clint.
Looks like he's getting his audio worked out. Can you guys give me a check, Joe and Joe?
Yep. Check.
Yeah,
Can you
check.
hear me?
All right.
And here is my audio.
Greetings.
Hello, good sir.
Hey.
Who are all
Hey,
you
Clint.
people? It's like I just got ganged up on, man.
Yes. Don't worry, this is the maximum here. Only three of us.
Yeah,
With
this is
with all our personalities, it's got to be much more than that, huh?
Yes.
So who is everybody?
So I'm Joe Bouchel. You were in contact with me through email. Um, and these are the other guys if they want to introduce themselves. Yeah.
Hey. Hey, Clint. I'm Joe Irwin.
Greetings.
and my name is Quinn. Unfortunately, to keep things in sync with the podcast, my name is Joe Q. Because our podcast is titled "The Cup of Joes," which we started in our buddy's basement a couple years, and just to kind of get together every now and then now that we're all kind of um, been working from home and whatnot, that we kind of brought this back to life in the last year or so, and it's been pretty fun. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to have a, like a platform to. A lot of people, I think we forget sometimes. A lot of people don't have this, and so like when I get an email from somebody who sounds just desperate, God, I want to leave the system, or God, I hate this. You forget sometimes that you have this, this platform that you can speak your grievances and speak all this, even if it does nothing, at least it satisfies that need, so
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
so where are you calling in from? I thought I might have read Utah area and your blog.
yes, just right below the county line of Salt Lake City. We're in Draper, Utah. So interesting place. It's become, they call it the new, they call this little area Silicon Slopes because all of the technology industry is moving in here. It was interesting because they built the NSA center here, which is to track everybody, massive computers that take all kinds of water, and tried to shut it down by shutting off their water and all this stuff. And then right after that, you had Google, you had all these different companies start moving in, because obviously they're working together.
Yeah.
So yeah, now it's just becoming this tech nightmare that a lot of people are starting to leave because it's becoming Silicon Valley, basically the new Silicon Valley. So
Yeah.
it's a little strange.
Wow. Cool.
And
Yeah. We're also. I think Quinn and Joe they're in the Chicago area, and I'm out east. I'm in Massachusetts, so we're from all over the place here now.
Very nice.
Mhm.
So what's the subject today, boys?
Yeah. So last week we talked about kind of natural law and then the development of civil law and common law and admiralty law. And at the very end, we just briefly touched upon the Strawman Story and looked at your work just a touch. So we figured that was a good precursor to. So really, I think we want to focus on that to start, and then maybe wherever the conversation takes us, we kind of go from there.
Sounds good.
So maybe like the first question I have at least is, why do you think it's important for each individual to know this Strawman story?
Well, I mean, what's the definition of a fool? I would say definition of a fool is someone who's under a system of law and they don't know what that law is. I mean, have you seen the legal code? Much bigger than my ass. It's like huge, right? It's massive, and no lawmakers don't even know it. You can't keep track of it, and so you, why do you need to know? Well, I'll tell you. I'll put it to you this way. Pick any board game. How do you play the board game if you don't know the rules?
Good question.
Yes.
You watch other people.
How do you play the legal game if you don't know the rules? Why are some people so successful in the legal realm? And why are some people in abject poverty? Well, the trick answer to that is it's designed that way. You can't have wealth without poverty, of course. But the true answer is that you're pretending to be an avatar on a game board. A piece of a person, a straw man, if you will, which is a status assigned to you at birth that you confirm and ratify by continuing to use it through the age of consent. You continue to use the name, the number, the marks, and all the different things of identity. And therefore, you're agreeing by usage to the contractual, what they call the social contract, or basically the U.S. code that governs persons. And you need to know that persons aren't real. They're completely a fiction. It's like the avatar that you would play in the Matrix. You're inhabiting a character, or in a video game. It's not real. You're moving it. Right, you're actually participating in it, and it's a vessel, so like a rental car, you're using the vessel to do commerce. But the problem is, when you're using someone else's property, you have to be bound by their law, not your own private law, or not God's law, or the law of nature. So we need to know that while this country was set up by a bunch of very wealthy men who intended to act in the private, and still do, they created this sort of side corporation through the 14th Amendment, and through naming the seat of government in Washington, D.C., which is completely foreign from the 50 United States, States United, right? United States is a corporate municipal corporation in Washington, D.C. that we all become member of. And that, it's crazy, because if you look at the birth certificate process, you go down to the Texas birth website, the deed of records website, and it explains what happens when you get a birth certificate. And it says it puts you, so right now you're just a baby, you're born, that's all. You don't have a name, because names don't exist in reality. Names aren't real. They're the creation of man, right? You don't have a status. You don't have anything. You're just a beautiful creation of God. That's all you are. But see, that can't be, because that means you're free. You can't have that. And so you must assign a symbol, a status of proprietary ownership to the baby. And so you create this birth certificate, like birthing a ship into the harbor, declaring its manifest and all that stuff. So they create this birth certificate, which is a receipt for the abandonment of property to your parents. And I don't kid you, that is what it actually is. It's a receipt. And delivery, actually, when you go to the delivery room, that means abandonment. Look it up. To deliver something is to abandon or hand over the rights to. And so that's what happens to us in birth. And what does it say? It says, right on the Texas website, I'm sure it says it elsewhere, that by doing this, the birth certificate creates a status whose law and domicile, therefore, is under the United States. Washington, D.C., something completely foreign to the people or the states. Now, when they were signing the Declaration of Independence and signing writing the Constitution, there was a debate. Should we say we the people, or should we say we the states? Because that's what a state is. It's a group of people. Okay? And those people are all private or foreign from one another, just as the United States is a foreign entity that is completely foreign from the states. Now, some states have given up some sovereignties, Texas a lot less than most. But for the most part, all states have given up certain rights or sovereignties to the United States in order that the United States and its military protect the states from threats both foreign and domestic. Well, if you look up what a domestic is, you're going to find out a U.S. citizen while residing in a state is a domestic. So how this works is the birth certificate gives you a domicile, which means your law comes from the United States, a corporation in Washington, D.C., whose jurisdiction extends to all public lands. And the public law is what that's called. U.S. Code, public law. FDA, public law. NIH, IRS, all public law. It applies to public persons. Remember, a person can be a corporation. So where does that leave us? Well, okay, so we're all in the United States. And that sounds like a good thing because, we think of the United States as 50 states in compact to protect each other and all that. But that's not what it is. United States, again, that is Washington, D.C., and a jurisdiction of law that we are bound to, and that's our domicile. Now, when we say resident, and that's what the birth certificate does, it gives you domicile in the United States and only mere residency in the state. In other words, you're a foreign agent in each state. This is why you can't own property. You don't actually own land. You don't get the deeded title. You get a much lower in status title. Because you're not one of the people of the state, you cannot have private land. And this is the very basis of all of our misconceptions about what it is to be a citizen of the United States. We think that we are the people. We think that we are of the states, when in fact, anybody in the world could come through the United States, get a visa, and go to school or work in any of the states. Their domicile is the United States. Their residence is one of the states. Okay? You have the lowest lowest status in society possible as a U.S. citizen, and it essentially means that you cannot govern yourself. It was initially given through the 14th Amendment to slaves who were freed, emancipated, which means incorporated into society. So our biggest problem right now is that, one, we want to act privately, but we're public, we're acting as public persons. So it's like we have this mask on. The Latin for persona is mask. And we walk around with that mask. We do commerce. We automatically assume that we're getting protections and consumer protections and certain rights and, all those things that come with citizenship. But what we don't have is what the Constitution protects. See, we don't have constitutional rights because the Constitution doesn't give any rights. The Constitution protects the inherent rights of men. Well, there's the problem. We're not acting as men, we're acting as persons. When you go to a court and he says, "Is Clint Richardson here?" and I'm here, I'm admitting to the judge that I am that status, right? I've just given up and I'm considered now the lowest possible unself-governing, person, and therefore I have a set of rights that are assigned to me, just like an employer assigns a set of rights to its employee. The employee cannot break those rules. So I've given up all of my God-given or natural rights, which they would refer to as inherent rights, which is basically the right to say no. I mean, if you really get down to it, no, I will not do this. No, I will not act in person. No, I will not do this. I will not follow a law that is against my morals, etc., etc. And those God-given rights have been replaced with state-given rights or man-made law, legal law. And so why do you need to know this? Well, because without knowing or understanding, your parents put you, who without knowing or understanding then confirmed and ratified the fact when you turned the age of adultery, which is essentially, adulthood or adultery, it's the same thing, legalized adultery. You reach the age of consent, and now you're consenting or volunteering to be in this personhood. You're saying, I can't govern myself, I cannot be trusted to be private, and therefore I'm an apprentice or employee of your corporation. Give me rights, give me benefits, give me all the things I love as a slave, right? And if you go back into history and you read the quotes of very, very prominent men, you're going to find that most of them, including, people like Aldous Huxley and anybody that's ever that's on the inside or knows what freedom actually means, they'll say, most men won't choose freedom even if it's put in front of them. So what I'm trying to tell you, you ask, why does someone need to know what the straw man is, what the status is that we agree to voluntarily, even if we don't know it? That's okay, because the law says that's okay. We agreed to we rent the vessel, and therefore, just like we rent a car, we're under that law. Why that's important is because you've given up your true freedom. You've given up all your inherent rights to be replaced with artificial or legal rights. And if you want to know what your rights are as a person compared to, I don't know if anyone can screen share, but if you pull up U.S. code,
Joe I's pretty good about screen sharing. He's our engineer on the of the crew.
If you can go to the Cornell website, that's the best one. But if you just type in U.S. Code section, Title 42, Section 1981, that will tell you what your rights are. And your rights are, and I quote, to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and extorted or exacted from. Go to C. Well, hey, what did they change it? Oh no, there it is. Sorry, go to A.
Yeah, here it is. Yep.
Go ahead and read it. I mean, it's you should know this because, hey, this is your law. See, you don't know this. Why do you need to know you have? Because this is your law. This is what gives you rights. This document called U.S. Code, because that's what you agree to as a person. Read it. Read it out loud.
All persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have the same right in every state and territory to make and enforce contracts, to sue, be parties, give evidence, and to the full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of persons and property as is enjoyed by white citizens, and shall be subject to like punishment, pains, penalties, taxes, licenses, and exactions of every kind, and to no other.
Now, do you think it's a good thing that you're able to make and enforce contracts, to sue and be sued, to be parties and to give evidence? Do you think does that sound like it's something good? Or is that set up to make you fail or allow you to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and extorted or exacted from? The good news is no one else can exact from you or do all these things except the United States. Hope that makes you feel better. But essentially, you're saying my king, the United States, right, has the right to punish me, put me in pain, penalize me, tax me, license me. License is a funny word because it actually means lawlessness. If I give you a license to do something that someone else can't do, I'm giving you I'm making your action lawless, basically. And then exaction means taking something from you that is not my due. So your right is to have everything taken from you that is not the United States do. This is why the IRS exists. This is why police give you tickets. This is why everything happens. Now, you notice this part about white citizens?
Yeah.
It's kind of odd, but you got to remember this is based on the statement of equal rights, right? So the 14th Amendment, remember the 13th Amendment basically says voluntary slavery is now legal. It says no more involuntary servitude, but it doesn't say specifically that voluntary servitude is not, we can be a slave, we just have to do it voluntarily and through contract, which is what citizenship is. Now remember, you don't have to sign a contract. Use is the highest form of contractual obligation. If I use a person, I'm bound by its law. I use its benefits, as it says, the benefit of all laws and proceeding. Do you think it's good that you're bound by the full and equal benefit of all laws of the United States when you read something like this? No. You see, your God-given rights, your inherent rights, is to say, hell no, I'm not going to agree to that. Why would any man in their right mind agree to be punished, put in pain, penalized, taxed, licensed, and extorted from? Why? So you ask, why do you need to know what a person of the United States is when it says all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States? That's you and me? Right. I would say above all else, that probably answers that question. Now you can go down and you can look at Part B and C. There's your make and enforce contracts. So why is this a good thing? Well, in hell, in commerce, it's great. But, you don't need to make a contract. You used to do it in a handshake. You could do it by exchanging a piece of turf. You could do a lot of different things that signified an honorable man's intention to self-govern himself and fulfill his obligations. Now, when you make it a contract, that means I don't trust you and you don't trust me. See, only men who cannot be trusted and who cannot self-govern need the United States to do it for them. So they need a contract. So why contractors are so horrible. So making, performing, and modification and termination of contracts, the enjoyment of all benefits, privileges, terms, and conditions of the contractual relationship. What is citizenship? It is a contractual relationship. Okay? What we are in is called a performance debt. We think of debt as a monetary thing, but in fact, citizenship is called a performance debt, meaning we're required to perform all the things that we're required to do according to being a citizen, filing the taxes, doing all this, doing all that stuff, or if we don't, we again have the right to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and extorted from. Okay, which means, hey, you didn't pay your taxes, we're going to attach it to your property tax, or we're going to create a fee that didn't exist yesterday, and if you don't pay it, we're going to attach it to your property tax, and because you're a U.S. citizen, we can take your house because you didn't pay your property taxes. Right? So why do you need to know? I mean, this alone should be a bombshell. People should wear t-shirts of this saying this is what U.S. citizenship is. Now, it's even more important to look at the bottom, Section C. Protection against impairment. The rights protected by this section are protected against impairment by non-governmental discrimination and impairment under color of state law. Now remember what happens when you get the birth certificate. Status is created and you are put under it, and then you consent to it when you keep acting in that name, number, and all that, right? Well, what does that mean, impairment? We can understand non-governmental discrimination. That could be anything. But what is impairment under color of state law? Well, this is where it gets really interesting because this is referring to private law. This is referring to a foreign law, because when you're a United States citizen and your domicile, your law comes from the United States, a corporation in Washington, D.C., Well, that means while you're in the states laws are inferior to the federal law. I think we can all think of examples where the federal government trumps the state law. For instance, I can give you a license or a little card that says you can smoke pot in California, but guess what? At any time, as a U.S. citizen, it's still illegal, and the feds can come in and arrest you. The local police can come in and arrest you. Why? Because they work for municipal corporations that are guarding the public. They're they're like your police. Police means policy, right? So they're there to enforce the public law. Public law comes to the United States. If you're in the state, you are private or foreign from the United States. You're not under its domicile. The whole thing is created to keep the slaves. They didn't free the slaves. They incorporated them federally and then offered that same incorporation or emancipation process through the 14th Amendment to all of us. And they did this around the world in all the nations. We then, our parents, I should say, being uneducated, got suckered into it. We, being uneducated, do the same thing to our children because it's become a custom. But the problem is, what this is saying is the state cannot protect you from the federal law. The state cannot protect you from, meaning the state constitution does not apply to you, nor does the federal constitution, because that constitution only applies to the states. We, the people, we, the states. You are domestic. You're for all intents and purposes, while you're in a state, you have no more right or protection in the state than any what they call illegal alien, right? There's no difference except that you have permission or easement to be there through your citizenship. But the state cannot protect you from the federal government. That's what that says. So, do you need to know what's going on? Do you need to know why you have no rights, and that any rights you do have are assigned to you according to the those who make them, and then extort you for everything you have? Yeah, you need to know that, I'd say. So anyway, that's my long answer.
No, I think that was great start. I had a quick question on the birth certificate portion, because that was something to do with the capital letters. Essentially, everybody's essentially a John Doe, and then when you're assigned your birth certificate, it's typically it is capital letters, and that essentially creates the.
That's called style. And so you have various style manuals, which is how you should write certain things. It's not law. It's more like a rule. So the difference would be if you're a father and you have a wife, you're considered head of household, you make the rules in your house. That doesn't mean that you break the laws of the United States. Your rules do not ever trump, the laws of the United States, nor does the rules that the Federal Reserve or the Post Office or any other entity make. Their rules are never higher than the law that created them. Well, Congress created all these agencies, and Congress created you through its various agencies. So the style of writing in these style manuals, and you can pull those up, is more of a rule or a etiquette type of thing, so that when you're writing something in a contract especially, you know that you're talking about a corporate thing or something that is artificial, something not that is not living. So you're talking about a person, which can be a corporation, association, individual, etc. And then when you get married, it's unbelievable what they have to say about that in the courts. But when you get married, you're basically two persons becoming one person. So you're actually incorporating when you get married. You form a corporation, but in legal law, that's called a family, right? You can't have a family in legality because guess what? Legality it doesn't exist. It's like the Matrix. It's code. It's built strictly on symbols and words. So there is no family in the legal law. There's only family in in reality. So to it, a family is a corporation. That's how it's defined. So when you're talking about the capital letters and all that stuff, it's very important to, you know, you if you're filling out a legal document, you'd probably go to an attorney, because that is really what they're there for. But my my question to you is, you know, do you want to continue to have to fill out legal documents? Because, I mean, would you rather go back and maybe reclaim your inherent rights and be private from this slave holding company they created for ignorant men? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm just
it just
I'm
I'm just
just
curious.
asking.
You know, my dad, my grandma was a an immigrant, and she actually spelled my dad's name wrong on his birth certificate. So basically, all the legal documents that he's gotten his whole life has been that misspelling.
And you know what? A lot of people will say, "Oh, that matters." Some people might even use that to get something thrown out of court and all that stuff. But in all honesty, when you start reading the maxims of law, the principles of law, the very foundation of law, most of which come from the good ones anyway, come from the Bible, and all the bad ones are contractually stated. It basically says that intent, like you can spell your. This is why people used to be able to sign with an X, because they were illiterate, couldn't sign their name, but their intention on the contract was sealed by that little symbol that they put on there. That symbol represents their signature. So you'd be very hard pressed to disprove intent or usage based on the misspelling of a name.
So could
Because
the
I mean,
same
if you think about it this way: how do you prove possibly that there is a correct way to spell something? English is a creation of, it's letters or symbols created by man, and just because we have these rules, you have to start thinking outside of this box. Who says a name has to be spelled this way? Who says 1+1 = 2? Right? Those are very exacting systems created by men that have nothing to do with reality, right? It looks like it does, but in truth, there is no time. Time is a construct of man. There is none of this exists. If I go, there was a Twilight Zone. Just to give you an example of the way that we need to start thinking of things. Because these things are meant to be useful tools. They're not meant to govern us. They're not meant to say, my birthday on the Jesus timeline is this. Whereas on the Jewish timeline, it's this. And on the Greek timeline, it's this. And on the, right? But, we're in the Jesus timeline. So we start at the birth of Jesus. The Jews start at the 3,000 something, at the creation of Earth, as they say, they say it. So they have a completely different timeline, but we're thrust upon this timeline, and it starts at 0. Okay, so that means that you actually have to believe that November exists. Can you show me November? I was born August 8th, 1972. What the hell does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything unless you respect the fictional system, the legal calendric system that was created to basically entrap our minds into that type of system. So in the Twilight Zone episode back in the 60s, this guy was called, fantastic. It was called How to Serve Man. Did you guys ever see that?
Yes, I've seen that. To serve man. Yeah.
All right. Well, then you know the plot of the story. Well, so the guys, without ruining the story, because it's fantastic, the guys he's held prisoner in a spaceship, and these aliens, they're taking him across the universe, back to their home planet, essentially. Well, I won't tell you that either. But he asks what time it is to these aliens, right? And I'll never forget the first time I heard this, because the rest of the show doesn't matter. It was only this point that really stuck with me. He said, well, in space, there is no point of reference to suggest a time, whereas on Earth, you have the stars and the sun placement of the sun, and you have all kinds of different ways to really, so on Earth, where your time exists, it would be this, but out here there is no time, right? So if you go 15 miles up in the sky, there is no time, guys. Right? That is a artificial construct, just like any language is, any art, any mathematics. All of that stuff is artificial, and what's really interesting about it is when you start considering mammon is another one, value, or the value of money. We consider it to be real, whereas the gold fixing happens every day at the Rothschild Bank in London, City of London, another corporation like Washington, D.C. But who says that's the value? Well, they do. And because you're a person in the United States, sorry, that's what you have to. You have to believe in the value of money. You have to believe in time. This is what our system runs on. You have to believe in the legal law. You have to believe in all these things we're putting forward to you. But in reality, none of it actually exists. So what I'm trying to say there is that whether you believe it or not, the person is bound by it. And that's our problem. We're bound by everything that is fictional, and we're ignoring the truth. The truth will set you free. Direct quote from the Bible. Except when you look at truth, it's God or Jehovah. So the truth will set you free. God is truth. Go back to reality is the message here. Be reborn into nature and follow the law of nature, which Christ is the example of. That is the whole story. Now, second I mention the Bible, people go nuts. They think of religion. No, the Bible isn't religion. I spent years and years and wrote 3 books on the subject of comparing the Bible to the legal law. And you'll find that everything in the Bible is opposed to the legal law, because the Bible is a book of law. It is not a religion. Religions are built around objects, but the Bible is actually considered the common law, and this is in legal books. You can find a lot of places. You find the principles of our law, our system of law, come from the maxims, come from the Bible, all the ones that would protect you as a man, tell you not to get into contract, not to respect persons, not to respect titles, not to do any of that stuff, not to fall prey to the fiction, to the artifice, to what is man-made, right? So you got this book, and all common law countries, which is all, the English common law countries, Australia, Canada, the U.S., we adopted the English common law system, and that the foundation of that is the Bible. The Bible is a copyrighted document of the Queen, of the Crown Corporation. Where's the Crown Corporation? City of London. So we adopted that as our common law system, and that means that, strangely enough, the government recognizes it as the common law, or the foundational, maxims, again, because it's there's no use creating this anti-nature law or anti-God law, the legal system, unless you have something to compare it to something to defeat, something that you want to put aside. So what does the Pope do? It used to be that the church was the government, but hey, what if we divide, and now we have church and state, and we say, if the state does something bad, now we have the church to forgive it, or we have God to forgive it. And if the church does something bad, we have the legal system to forgive it, and therefore it can never fail, right? So we're in the legal, we're stuck in the matrix, we're stuck in the legal system, a system built completely on code. And we believe in the construct, we believe in time, and we believe that everything is governed according to certain symbols and numbers and letters and all that thing. And we believe that we are a person, which is merely a status in the society. And as long as we continue with these beliefs, we are therefore completely impotent and useless, because we don't have the inherent right to act on our moral compass, our religious belief. We don't have those rights anymore. We have a franchise, which is called freedom in legal. It means franchise. It's not real freedom. It's like a rat in a cage has freedom, right? If I'm a rat and I'm in a cage, I have that much freedom. You can't say that's not freedom, right? Well, we're in an open air debtor's prison called the United States jurisdiction. The public lands, public places, as public entities. That's what we are. So, again, long answer but you have to understand that we've fallen prey to fiction, pure 100% artifice, complete nonsensical legal law. And you also have to remember that a lot of scholars have defined the word legal as the undoing of the law of nature or the law of God, the undoing of God's law. And that's where we're at. And that's how we're controlled. And like I said, there's no signature required. You just have to act the part. As long as you're acting the part, then you're getting the benefits and you're using them and you're accepting them at their value, and therefore you cannot claim ignorance. You cannot claim anything like that because, again, the fool is a man who is under a system of law that he does not know the law. I mean, that's where we're at. And so I spent all these years figuring this out, writing about it, and finally coming to the where we are now, which is figuring out how to go private, meaning how to not use that person and still act according to our God-given inherent natural rights, which is the freedom of assembly, basically, or association. And that's where I am now.
Right.
So,
yeah, that was going to be my next question: is if you're born into this, how do you rectify that or try to move away from that? And like, if you were to, if I give an example, maybe an example might be if someone were to have a child in some sort of setting, not in a hospital, there is no birth certificate, there's no record, just hypothetically, is that person considered a person of the United States or a citizen of the United States if there is no actual record of them having personhood or that persona, that mask of an identity that they'd have to assume? And how does the law pertain to them?
but you
Imagine
gotta
someone,
understand,
yeah,
to make your question invalid,
yeah,
okay, is to say you're not born into this. Okay, there's two words. There's born and there's born with an e, and then there's birth.
okay,
So you're born again. You're born a free and natural man. You're born, and because you're born in one of the states, you're actually considered to be one of the people of that state, on equal footing with all the rest of the states in compact. So you've got the sovereignty, or you're part of that so-called sovereignty. That is one of those things. Now, the birth certificate, the person is a direct product of your vital statistics being recorded onto an application. That's what the original birth certificate is when your parent fills it out. It's an application for basically for them to give up their parental rights and put you into the state. Now, they don't really understand that, so you can't blame them just any more than you can blame yourself if you did the same thing as an ignorant, common man. It's just how
sure,
it's how we're raised, right? It's cultural. It's not an excuse, and we shouldn't use it as an excuse, but we have to overcome that. So your mistake is to think again that you can be born as a fictional character. How's that possible? I mean, U.S. citizens didn't exist before
right,
the 14th Amendment, essentially. There was no citizenship definition before that. So how are you born, right? It being a term of nature, how can you use a term of nature in the artifice? This is the mistake we keep making over and over, is to equate artificial things. You think a person is real? You think a status is a real thing? You think you're
Okay.
born with a status? Now, you can go in the royal family and they can, say, oh, you're of the blood of the royal family, therefore you have a status. Do you think that's real? No, it's not real. It's nothing in nature. There's no words in nature. There's no numbers in nature. There's nothing of the system. There's nothing of the matrix in reality. Sure looks real, sure feels real, sure, but no, and none of it is all artifice. It requires belief,
Right.
which is another word for faith. You have to have faith in the system, faith in money and its value, faith in all these different things. So the answer to your question then becomes one of just a misunderstanding of terms. Now, the 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 person is created as a direct result. The status is created as a direct result of the application that gets fulfilled. The receipt is the birth certificate, and you're pretty much told to raise the kids as your own, even though you've given up your parental rights, technically, which the courts will tell you the marriage is a three-party contract between the husband, the wife, and the state. The man is always the head of the corporation, which is why he gets screwed out of everything. And the attorneys use the emotional state of women to pretty much go after the entire estate till there's nothing left to even sue for. So screwing themselves out of everything. Meanwhile, the attorneys get everything. So the whole system is one of abuse and usury and harm, because that's all the legal realm can do. You have to. Every court case has to have a monetary value. There's nothing that we do in modern society and legal society that doesn't revolve around some form of making money. Period. End of story. That's all this is. It's a commercial existence. And to do that, again, to play the game of Monopoly, how are you going to do it unless I give you a little thimble or a little car or a little shoe and say that's you? Now, in order for
Right.
you to play my Monopoly game, you have to agree that you are that shoe and that the rules of the game apply to you because you are the shoe. Are you the shoe? Did you
Not
keep
naturally.
being the
No.
shoe when you gave all of them, you had all these properties, and anybody that stepped on your property, you'd really screw them over by charging them fees, and right, everybody's trespassing, and you're this old miser with all these properties, and you've won the Monopoly game. What happens? You give all the money back to the bank, the board closes up, you go back to the real Monopoly game, which is U.S. citizenship, and pretty much do the exact same thing. Monopoly was intentionally a game. If you read the history, she created it as a massive criticism of capitalism. So the point, though, is that you have to agree. You have to believe for that little short while that you are the shoe. You are the person that is walking around on that Monopoly board, and you have to agree to the rules. Because if you don't agree to the rules, the whole system can't work, right? So we have to believe that I have to believe I am Clint Richardson with social security number this and a federal address, mailing address, and locator number, which is my zip code. And I have to know this, and I have to do this, and I have to believe that all of that is somehow natural, that somehow all of that is truth. And I'm here to correct that delusion, right? I'm here to correct all of these untruths that we believe are truths in order to hopefully find good men. I know there's a lot of bad men that would love to have the freedom to do a lot of bad things. But I'm looking for good men who actually want to be truly in their hearts free, which means giving up all of that, rendering back to Caesar what is Caesar's. Caesar just means district, right? District of Columbia. And going back to what's called a private association or private association, private this, private that. Private means foreign. It means not acting in person. It means not getting all those benefits and protections and insurance and all those different things. But to be able to live according to the law of nature which the legal law is 100% opposed to. In other words, I can act in charity. I don't even need money. I can grow my own food. I can collect rainwater. I can divert a stream to build something that will create energy. I can have deeded land. I can actually be a landowner and have the mineral rights to the land and use the water. With uh, technically the cheese wedge all the way down to the center of the earth is considered, that deeded land. So as long as I'm not doing any evil or harming anybody else or causing some infringements of any other man's, rights, then I don't need a person. I don't need a nanny government. I don't need to be in a prison, open air prison for debtors, and I don't need to be in debt because I have good men who agree to be just like the foundation of the states and the countries. I have good men who wish to act privately and who wish to help and make each other succeed, who will hold no wealth unless everybody else has the same wealth, who will follow all these rules that are laid out in the Bible to make you not fall into the legal fiction of man. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking, and finally, after 15, 20 years of searching, more so in the last 10 years, we found this thing has been there the whole time called a private membership association. You might have heard of some of them. For instance, the Bar Association. We all know there's something fishy with the bar. No, not really. It's just a private association. The NFL, the NHL, they're all private membership associations. Other examples, you had speakeasies or places where you had, during Prohibition, for instance, you had places, private clubs, where people could still go and drink. How is that possible during Prohibition? They're private. Prohibition is a public law. Why can I go down the street and smell this horrible smell of tobacco coming from a hookah lounge, whereas nowhere else in the city can people smoke? What's going on? Well, that's a private membership association where people can smoke because the public law does not apply. What is the public law? No smoking in public places. It's a private club. You see, this privacy has been going on. You come to a road that says private road or private property. You don't go there, right? Because you're public. I'm not gonna trespass on private property, but I'll trespass everywhere in the public. But private property, I'm not gonna go there. Yeah, that's because it's private. You're not supposed to be there. But the problem with the U.S. citizens is you can't have private property. You're public. You're a public entity. You can't own the land. You can have use of the land, but you can't own it because you're not one of the people. You don't belong in the state. You are a resident there, not domiciled there. You are a visitor. You're a temporary resident. Period. End of story. So we have been tricked into this simulation of the real. We've been tricked into believing in the simulation of the United States, the States United, the people. We still to this day call ourselves the people, and we're not. And this is the foundation of all our problems, all our woes, all our confusion. Everything stems from not understanding who the hell we are. And in simple terms, when I say who, what, why, where, what, I'm a creation of God. I'm a creation of nature. I am nothing else. I have no name. I have no number. I'm completely anonymous. I have nothing to identify me because all identification is legal. And they actually call your first name in legal. They call it your Christian name, and they call the last name the surname. And what that means is that by putting your Christian name, your God-given name, a gift from your parents, by adding your surname, the property name, the family name, as they say, by doing that, you're corrupting the Christian name. You're saying I'm no longer following God's law. My intention now is to be a legal citizen, legal entity or agent. So the reason I say last name is because it means last will and testament. I'm not using the Christian name, I'm using the last name. That's why the last name comes first in all those documents you were talking about. So everything in the system is a trick. When they give you the birth certificate, when they give it doesn't apply to you. All right? You're not born into it. Your parents fill out an application called for a birth certificate, a certification process, and the entity that's created is not you. It's a property of the United States that you decide that you act as because your parents tell you to because they don't know any better, and then you confirm and ratify at the age of consent. At no time is Clint Richardson me. It is not. I'm not born into it. I don't suddenly morph or metamorphize into it. I don't spring out of a cocoon like a caterpillar and become this beautiful butterfly of a person. No, the person is completely separate from me. When you get a social security card, what does it say? This is property of government. It's not yours. The driver's license, property of government. Nothing about the person is you except that you agree to pay its debts. You agree to perform in the performance debt according to the contractual obligation that's required of persons of the United States to get all these benefits and to be put in pain, punished, tax, licensed, and extorted. Thank you.
So actually, that's I'm glad you kind of finished up there with that one. We have a question from Sandoval at home from one of our viewers, and he's asking if a mother does not sign a birth certificate for her child, what consequences should she expect for herself and the child going forward?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, this is another problem that we have is because, I mean,
And can she physically not sign it? You know, could she
oh,
walk?
you wouldn't fill it out in the first place.
Right.
Why would you fill it out and not sign it, right? But what you're going to find is that the nurses and the doctor signs that. She signs the birth certificate generally. It's generally the mother. She signs the birth certificate as what's the term? I'm sorry.
Essentially, the co-owner of that child.
Well, no, it's a term in law that means you're actually ratting someone out. You're confessing.
At birth?
I'm gonna have to think about it. I don't know why I can't think about it right now. I usually have this stuff down, but it's a term. It says
birth.
Mother.
Attendant at birth.
No, if you pull up an actual birth certificate, you'll see it. But I don't know why I can't think of it. Sorry, but it's a term that represents like giving an affidavit or giving a. Oh, if I could see it, I would be able to speak about it much easier.
It's a good question, Sandoval.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't fill it out in the first place. But what you're gonna find, and the reason I know this is because a lot of people who've been following me for years did this. They did not fill out a birth certificate. And first, you'll find the nurses and doctors, they're going to come after you like you wouldn't believe, call you, harass you. You didn't fill out your birth certificate. Why? Because the state is paying them. The United States is paying them a lot of money to get your vital statistic information in order to create this thing. Because informer. That's what she is. The mother is generally the informer unless, it says something different. So she signs the birth certificate as the informer. When you think about an informer, it's like a witness, like someone that's informing on another. Or I'll give you another example. I got a ticket. It was a ticket for speeding. But
Shame
being
on you.
being the nice guy that this police, yeah, exactly.
Shame on you.
So that gave this police officer the right to exact from me. Okay, great. It's my right. I shouldn't complain. So he writes me a ticket. He says, I'm gonna be nice. If you pay this ticket, if you let me extort you without you going to court, then it won't go on your record. I mean, how screwed up is that? Pay your ticket and don't go to court, and therefore it won't go on your record. Don't defend yourself. Don't just let it go. Let me extort from you what I can, and there it is. But on that ticket, it says this is not an information. You go, what the hell does that mean? What does it mean when my mom acts as an informer, right? If the ticket that I got is not an information, I'm not being informed, in other words, what does it mean that my mom is an informer? And if you want to, again, you can pull up any legal dictionary and see what an informer is, but when you sign the document, that's what you're signing as. You're not signing necessarily as yourself as much as you are signing as the informer. Or in other words, like, I'm informing that the crime has been committed. I have this child out of lawful wedlock. And see, the problem, there you go. So the question
is not a competent witness, and that's
So the question is, why would you then, knowing what this means, which is confusing, why would you want to sign something as the informer? Informant, right? A person who informs or prefers an accusation. What exactly is your mother accusing? And the answer to that, surprisingly, is, well, she had you out of lawful wedlock, because persons aren't real. You're not actually married. You're just taking your status and another status, two persons, and incorporating them. That's why you need permission from the state, because the state controls, or I say state, I mean the federal. You need a license to do that, because you're changing the identity of these two persons and making them into one person, or a corporation of persons, right? So you're informing on yourself, basically, that you're not a fit mother, and that you're incompetent to have the parental rights that someone private would have, and you're giving those up. And you can, I got all kinds of documents that actually show court opinions of that very fact. So what people have done is they've had their baby at home, or they've not gone to the hospital, or they've gone to the hospital but refused the birth certificate. And they will still file something, but it won't be an official thing. Now, the problem you're going to have,
I mean, there's going to be a receipt, right? You got to pay for that hospital visit. There's got to be some form of transactional,
Well, yeah, but the birth certificate is completely separate from all that. That's basically a fishing expedition, right? To get you to sign that. That's, there's no requirement for you to sign a birth certificate. Absolutely, no. It's all voluntary. That's very important to understand. But again, the federal government pays a lot of money to hospitals and doctors. Ron Paul, for instance. Oh, Ron Paul's so great. You know how many birth certificates he signed? You know how many lives he enslaved to the United States by being a delivery doctor? Right? So, yeah, no, not a hero. Actually, quite the opposite. So what happened to these people is that eventually, as the years go by, well, now you've got the issue of, okay, well, you didn't give this child a public identity. Okay. Well, what does that mean? Well, how's he going to go to school? Because you believe that public school is somehow a requirement, or that it's part of life. You just have to do it, or whatever we believe. And so now you have the state coming after you saying, hey, your child's not in school. Well, but I don't have a child. Child is a legal term. You're talking about my son or daughter, you'll address them by their Christian name. There are all these different back and forth, but in the end, these people, yeah, they go through hell. And I'll tell you why. Because you're trying to do something private while acting in public. You had the child in person. That's a problem because again, you see this notion of the product of the marriage, product being a commercial term, is the child. So everything you do is considered to be, as your citizen, is considered to be a public action because you're not associating privately. You have no evidence of that. And so what people are finding is because they haven't corrected themselves, because they're still, I got a child, I got to work, I got to do all this stuff, I got to, I got to make money, how can I can't quit, I got to, and so you've got a slave basically attempting to declare its baby as a free man. Well, the law of slavery is that the child or the product of the slave belongs to the master of the slave. That's the problem with trying to fix the chain, this empty custom that we have. Instead of fixing yourself, you try to fix your child. Well, I'm here to tell you, until you fix yourself, until you become private, how can you have anything private? Because slaves don't own property. Slaves cannot own property. And when I say slave, yes, I'm speaking about a citizen. You're under a contract of slavery. A slave, the term itself really, it applies to a hard drive. I got 4 hard drives right here off camera. They're all slaves of my computer. That's the term. Okay? You got to use the term in its correct understanding without emotion, because there is no emotion in legal. You have to just understand these things without the emotion. And that's hard for people. So a slave can't declare something as its property or as its. So when you go to court, then you're appearing in person, declaring yourself rights that you weren't given by the state. Parentage rights? What are you talking? Parental right? No, you don't have those. So you get into this deep conflict. You paperwork everywhere, all because you didn't do it right in the first place. How do you do it right in the first place? Well, if you're going to have something private, and public entities cannot have private things, well, then obviously the base of the problem is you. You need to be private in order to have that inherent God-given right that you give up to be public. See, this is it gets hairy here because it's all about the recovery of what you think is already your right. But as a citizen of the United States, you abandon God, you abandon the law of nature, and you accept all the legal concepts and customs and duties and all that stuff. So this gets really hard. But the best answer is that unless you're private, yeah, you're going to have a lot of issues acting publicly with a private child. It's just not going to work. It is working. People are willing to die for their children, and those are my kind of people, not the kind of people that say CPS shows up at your door and you cower like a freaking lily. You cower like a dog and say, yeah, take my child, because it's the legal. I don't have any power, I don't have any parental rights, and the courts agree with that, which is why CPS is there in the first place. So all of this that we're talking about with the public law is public law. Birth certificates fall under public law. And so you have to remember that there are 2 different places to be in this, so-called country, and that is private or public.
So
period.
I've got a question. You're saying, you need to become private yourself if you want to do it the right way and have your child not be harassed their whole lives and you were harassed. So what does that actually look like? Because you said like with
That's a good question.
yeah.
That's a really good question, because people get, again, being confused about, it's the same as being confused about being born a person. That's impossible in nature, right? We don't consider these things in our logical or rational thinking that, okay, I can't be born a person, but if I consider all these other terms, then it kind of makes sense, right? But it's not really happening. Just like, there's a lot of gurus out there, and please keep in mind, I'm not selling you anything. All I'm telling you really is that if you want to be a free man, you follow Christ. Christ is the example. Christ is the word. Christ is the law, the son. Word, law, and son. They're all the same word, same meaning. So it's the example you follow to be a private man. Essentially, to be under the law of nature. To be in nature, you have to follow its law. If you go into the artifice, you have to follow its law, right? If you go into the matrix, you're under the matrix code. But remember, there is no spoon. What does that mean? Did you ever figure that one out? Did you ever really think about that? Why is there no spoon in the matrix? It's a hard one, huh? Because there is no matrix.
Right.
There is no matrix. There's no legal system. It's artificial. You see? Simulation. Great word. If you look at the older dictionaries, there was only one definition for simulation. Hypocrisy. See, I can build all the simulations, all the legal systems, and I can entice you, and I can do all these things, but in the end, it's you that has to be the hypocrite that wants to simulate. You have to want to be in the simulation. The simulation happens here, not out here. Right? How are you put into the Monopoly game? How do you put into the Matrix? They plug you in. Right? But it has to all happen up here. You have to believe it. You have to be either believe it or be willing to accept it even though you know it's not real. That's the definition of a hypocrite, right? To know something, to know the law but not follow the law, to know the law of nature, which is never, ever respect persons or flattering titles, never participate in money, mammon, never participate in all the things we participated, don't take false oaths, don't call men as gods, right? Take no false gods. You look up the word God, it means magistrate, it means president, it means mayor. No false gods. We have a real problem with understanding what the Bible means, because as I did, I looked up all the words. I'm like, holy shit, this thing is awesome. I mean, it's like it's not religious at all. It's like God means a man with power over you. That's it. When in the old days, you look at the old court transcripts from 100 years ago, it was a very well-known thing and a well-used phrase to say that I plea to God, the God of the court. The judge or magistrate was considered the God of the court, and you were praying to the God, or pleading, which is the word we use now. So in the old court transcripts, you'll see the terms praying to God, praying to the God of the court. Because back then they knew that God meant anyone with power. So the king goes and they change all the instances of the name of God, Jehovah, YHVH, they change that into the words Lord and God. So you have no idea what you're reading. You don't know if that's a man, or if it's God, or if it's this, or if it's that. You have no idea what you're reading, which was the idea. To keep the foundation of law hidden from you in plain sight, the transliteration of the Bible was done so that you can't know it. You can't know it in English. You have to go back and see what the intention was in all those ancient languages. That's what I did with all my writings and everything, my radio shows. I've been doing this for a long time. 3 long books on the subject. All of them are free. So again, we're talking about the knowledge, the understanding, and the living your life according to what is truth. And we know that words and numbers and codes and all these creations, inventions of man are not truth. They represent the truth in some form without substance. I don't look at the sky and see geometry. I see beauty, I see wonder, I see mystery, but what I don't see are freaking numbers or letters or y equals x. Okay, that's all man-made. That all requires input from something artificial. So, mixing all these things up, mixing what is true with what is fiction, is the very foundation of enslaving a man's mind. When you don't know the difference between what is truth, and look around, right? We have reality TV. Is it real?
No.
No. No, of course not. In the Big Brother house, behind every corner, there's a producer, a director saying what to do. Right? Saying, okay, you take an alliance here, you sleep with him, you do that, make for good ratings, give you a little bonus maybe. You know why I know that? Because I used to work in Hollywood. I knew the editors. You think those people you think those people on the Survivor Island were actually surviving, or do you think they were being pampered and fed and staying in hotels? You can believe whatever you want, and if you believe that they're surviving, well, then great. The show is, but it's reality TV, and in legal everything is inverse. Every word is inverted to mean its opposite, which is why we have so much trouble. So the only answer I can give you as far as implementation, because the first thing that's going to come to your mind is, okay, what paperwork do I have to sign?
Right.
Dude, learn from the Bible. It is your actions that make you private or public. It is not a piece of paper. If you believe that a piece of paper can turn your flesh into an artificial construct and being, if you believe that when you play Monopoly, you actually become and are the shoe, I can't help you, and I don't think anybody can. But if you recognize all that as fiction and you stop acting the part, you stop claiming benefits, you stop claiming the rights of pain, punishment, tax, license, and extortion. You stop claiming the good things too, the insurances, the protections, or what you think are good. But all those really protect are money, value, things that aren't real. See, everything in nature is priceless. But if they can convince you that a man has value in money, or that a cow has value in money, they can just about sell you anything. They can convince you of anything if they can just convince you that money has value and that everything in nature has value in money. That's mammon. That's why it says you can't have two gods. You either have the priceless nature of all existence, or you have the value in money of existence. That is the difference between the two realms, and you certainly cannot have both. So if you want to act now understand that you can form a private association, and you can do a lot of things that you probably couldn't do in public. You can smoke, you can do all these things, depending on your intention, right? But if you want to actually use this to say form, in my opinion, from what I've studied, I want to form something that's not even allowed anymore, which is a monastery. Because the Bible, the U.S. Code, the government, in all its cases, recognizes a higher power. It recognizes, for instance, an act of God. What's an act of God? Anything caused by nature. So if an act of God is considered the highest thing that can happen, and therefore the law of nature, which is behind it. What should you strive to be? Should you be an act of God or an act of the state, a person? Right? In your actions, do you need to be Joe Bushnell of the fourth generation Bushnells of Connecticut, or can you be Joe, a God-fearing man who does not fall for the trickery of legal prestige? Prestige means trickery and illusion, right? Can you do something without copywriting it? Can you do something without a patent? Can you do something to where you've just done something wonderful and good for someone else and you don't hand them a fee? Or you don't charge them because you've done some beautiful charity, some priceless gift that you've given. See, again, out here, everything's priceless. You cannot put a value on charity. You cannot put a value on forgiveness. And yet, if you have charity, why do you need money? If you have forgiveness, why do you need a court system? And this is why I think you need I'm using the word monastery. You could say a storehouse or a courthouse, or courthouses used to be churches. Some when the people came over here to escape religious persecution, they did so through what were called congregational churches. They set up the church and then built around it, using the church as a storehouse to feed everybody, make sure everybody's good, and then the law or any conflicts they had would be taken care of in the whatever name you want to put on it. The reason I say monasteries, because monasteries are places where both good men who wish to be closer to God or do some work in the name of God, or really, really bad men who also want to be good men, can go, and you're in a private area. You're in this prison, basically, that you, instead of going to a debtor's prison, you're going to a monastery. You're going to be forgiven. You're going to practice God's law amongst men who seek to do the same thing. Now, you don't have to call that religion, right? But what you do have to do is act religiously, which means when I follow a law, I don't make exceptions. I'm not lukewarm. I don't have one foot in, one. I don't plug into the matrix for commerce and then unplug to be right. You cannot, in my understanding, you cannot have both. Does that mean that people aren't doing it? No, of course. Private people come in the system through trusts. They create their own person, their own status. The problem is when that person gets in trouble, they abandon the person because they don't really have the obligations that we do. We agree to be in surety and all this stuff. All they're doing is creating a trust situation where everything they do in the legal realm, the artificial realm, gets put into a trust, and then the trust is in the name of whoever the trustor is in the private. So yes, you can do all of that stuff, but when we're talking about we're talking about the difference between, in the end, I think, between who's going to survive and who's not. And if you're still dependent on legal things, if you're still dependent on money, if you're still dependent on mammon, in other words, where you still value things in money instead of as beautiful, loving things, priceless things, then I don't think you're going to survive in the end when all this craziness starts happening. It's already started. The other thing is you now have the right to say, no, I'm private. Biggest right you have under God is to say, no, I will not participate in that. I will not contract. You're right in the legal realm. You're forced to be in contract, right? You don't have the choice, right? It's not like it's telling you, well, if you want to, you can win. No, citizenship is a contract, which is why they have to give you the right to contract. Ugh. So in the end, if you think about what a free man is self-governing, right? What does government mean? Mind control. Govern is control. Ment is Latin for mind. That's what government is. It's nothing more, nothing less than mind control. The question becomes who's controlling your mind? Is it the state or is it your spirit? Is it your soul? Is it your being? Is it everything that is moral? Is it a moral compass or is it a legal law, a contract? Is it something that's forcing you to do it, or are you voluntarily acting in a moral choice? In legal law, you don't have to make any choices. You get to vote for two evils, and one of those evils is going to be your president, right? But you're not actually voting. It's a lie. The Electoral College elects the president. The whole thing's a big scam. So anytime you vote, you're voting yes. Doesn't matter who you vote for, one of those evils is going to be president, and usually it's one of them, one of their family members. So you must start distinguishing and preparing yourself to live in truth, because only the truth will set you free. The second you intermix the artifice with the truth, that's where the confusion comes. That's where ignorance comes. That's where knowledge is lost. Now, please keep in mind that I'm not suggesting that you go into the woods and eat berries and bark. What I am suggesting is that you form what's called a private membership association, PMA. You can look that up. There's plenty of stuff online. There are good ones and there are bad ones. Like I said, I'm sure the KKK was a private membership association. The Boy Scouts of America, private membership association. The Bar Association. All these different things happening all around you don't even know. Okay? The difference is they can hire and fire at will. They can discriminate, which is a good thing if you're like-minded people who agree to act in a certain way, and someone says, I'm not going to do that anymore. Okay, bye. You're not in our association. You're not associating with us, right? Now, I don't want you to confuse the private membership association, which is unincorporated. Okay? There you go. PMA is like a private family. A PMA is an unincorporated. You do not need permission from government to freely assemble as a man, right? But what you're not doing is saying I'm a person and I'm going to also act privately. No, it just doesn't work that way. If you do things that are public, you're going to still have to pay public taxes. You're still going to have to do all that stuff. So this is where we've finally come to. PMA has an established history and maintained a significant, unique standing in law. There's apparently over 70 Supreme Court cases that support it. They're generally immune from all state and federal public laws. Okay? Does not mean you're immune from law. And this is why I'm trying to explain to you that the Bible is the foundation of law. It teaches you how to be private without public person or persona or mask or anything like that. This is what I have now come to, and there's another list right there: men's, women's, boys and girls clubs, the Cub, Brownie Boy and Girl Scouts of America, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, American Medical Association. It has really good success in the medical field because the FDA, public. All its laws are public. If you have a massage technique or a herb or anything that is beneficial to someone's health, why would you go into the public and agree to all these laws that pretty much tell you can't even sell your product, you can't advertise it and sell it, you can't do all these, when you could do it privately? In other words, if you want to be healed of your cancer, which would be illegal out here because cancer's, it's high profit. A lot of profit in cancer and its treatment out here. But over here in the private, none of those rules apply. You're not required to irradiate somebody to cure them. You might be like Brzezinski down in Texas, who found pee, a chemical or a protein in people that don't have cancer's pee, and he just transfused that into people with cancer and found great success. But he did it in the private, and it was illegal in the private because you're taking business away from the hospitals, which are all owned by government through investment. So you've got this ability to go private and only deal in the private outside of the public law with people who are like-minded and people who agree to the terms and conditions of that private association. Now, in that capacity, you have suddenly created an evidence, if you will, or you could even say it's a sort of like an affidavit that we acted in the private, therefore we're not bound. If the FDA comes knocking on your door, guess what? We're private. Screw it, piss off. Your laws don't apply here. So the private association, though, remember, that's also not a real thing. Even though it's unincorporated and it's your actions that make or break whether you're acting in private or not. It is your actions. Yes, you have this evidentiary thing that allows you and is accepted by the courts. It's protected. It's what allows you to go back to the private and have some evidence that that's how you're operating. You do not. Now, this is where my knowledge ends, because I've spent 15 freaking years, how many books, documentaries, and radio shows, thousands, trying to figure this out. And I finally figured this out just because I said, okay, if I wanted to start a business and I wanted it to be private, what would I do? And I just happened to come across this place called Pro Advocates, which is a thing down in Texas. Seems like a lot happens in Texas. And when I discovered that and I started reading what you just had on the screen and I started looking at it, I'm like, okay, this is it. There's one example. There's a place in Hawaii, and they got some land, they put it in a trust, and they created a bunch of tiny homes. God forbid, I'm not one that would live in a tiny home, but I respect the practice. I respect that private people want to do what private people want to do, and they created this thing, and you join it as an association. You pay a fee, some token that shows that you're a member, because again, that's evidence. And then you're in this free land. You're in this private area of Hawaii. It's no longer under the public law. And you're free to do things that you might not do in the public. Now remember, that doesn't include evils. This is why you must be in a moral, upstanding, man in order to make this work for you in a permanent fashion. But again, obviously, some very evil bastards out there have also have been using this since the inception of the country. The Bar Association, I'm not gonna no holds barred when it comes to the Bar Association. I'm disgusted by it, right? So you're talking about, they're called, literally in Scotland, attorneys are called devils. That's their official name, devils and devil masters. And it's amazing when you go into history, you find out that people used to be more afraid of lawyers than witches. Like, if you would not, no lawyers. Lawyers, pure evil. Because what is the job of a lawyer? It's to bring you into the legal system. That's all he can do. He can't do anything but induce you to sign something that puts you in a contractual situation under the law. Why you don't need that. So what I'm trying to get across here is that these private associations, which are completely established, you can read all about them, and you can call some of these companies, and they'll tell you exactly what they'll do for you. Pro Advocates, for instance, they charge $10,000 to join for a lifetime membership in their association. It's a private transaction, but then they, in turn, become like your legal aid team. If anytime they create your own private association, membership association, and they then will be there to defend you or to teach you how to defend yourself when the FDA or anybody comes knocking at your door and tries to introduce public law into a private situation. Okay? But you can see the need. If the only way the public can then interfere in the private is if the private is doing something that the public considers evil, right? Then you can see the need to, you know, relearn what's been lost to us, which is the law of nature, the law of God, the Bible, and everything this country was set up as far as common law comes from the Bible. A lot of people don't accept that or don't believe it, and yet it's written. I mean, you can find it all over the place in the dictionaries, in the laws in Pennsylvania. It still says it. I mean, it's pretty amazing discovery to understand that, and then to realize what the Bible actually says, and that it's not religion at all. Takes on it. Takes on a whole new contemplation and meaning. Which again is what my books are about. And so, I mean, that brings us to the end of my knowledge. Honestly, I just really want to stress that if you're really interested in being private, you really have to be and act. Like I said, you can't rely on a status or a something flattering title that says you are this. And the same goes for Christian, right? If I say I'm a Christian, does that mean I'm acting Christ-like? I don't know anybody that's acting Christ-like. I don't know any Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian as far as I'm concerned, because I don't know anybody who is following the example of Christ. I know a lot of criminals that go to church, and the Bible even warns that the criminals, the worst element will come to sit in the highest places to be seen, right? But yeah, the religious aspect of this, just throw it in the toilet. Religion, it has nothing to do with the Bible. Religion formed after the Bible. So understanding that, and that it's the foundation of the law is the first step. Understanding it by going back and doing what I did, which is to look up every word and see what it actually meant. You'd be surprised. You really would. The intent behind the Bible is so different than what religion teaches. Even even God has a definition. It's amazing. Like you don't have to think, what is God? Does God exist? Or no, it's a specific term. And really, if I were to put in the simplest terms, what is God and what is not? God is everything not man-made. God is everything not artificial. God is everything that's not a lie. That's it. Worship it. Love it. Cherish it. Protect it. Because it's what gives you life. It gives you being, and you are part of it. That's the true definition. The definition that, for God's sake, the Pope and the King, who act as gods, do not want you to know. They act, they're vicar or replacements of God. And it's, like I said, the reason I'm doing this is because I can't do it alone. It's no good to privately associate if there's no one else to associate with. And most of the people who are doing this are of the families, the wealthy families who keep it once you go private, you keep it secret. You don't tell people. Your court cases aren't public, so you can't read about it, right? Everything's happening in the private. So there's no access that you have to it to learn about it. And I swear, man, after 10 years of radio and me searching for this and trying to find it, there's never been anybody who said, and I'll throw the kid a bone and teach him about a private association. Or I'll teach them what privacy is. No, I had to find out the hard way. I had to do all this research, all this writing, all this time, give up so much in my life so that I had time to research and study. And now I've finally come to this understanding. And, I was ready to quit because I was getting so frustrated. Now I feel it's my duty to tell people, hey, this is what's being kept from us. This is what our masters, if you will, are keeping from us to keep us in that system where they can punish, tax, and extort us, basically. So look up PMA. Study it as much as you can. I'm trying to find the court cases right now, and I'm also looking for a couple books amongst all the other things I'm doing, which makes it a little hard. But I'm really looking for people to start studying both what I've found in my books, which are free, and also to start looking into this private membership association, understanding how to utilize it, but not depend on it. In other words, how to act in the private, use it as evidence of that action, but not as a crutch, not as, learn and grow the balls, grow the confidence that you need to literally tell government to piss off because you're not under its law. That's what we need to do.
I think we're gonna have to get that screen grab of you giving the finger for our YouTube when we release this video out. So that's great. We're definitely gonna have to grab that. Yeah, I think we're coming up just on 90 minutes. I know it's getting late for Joe on the East Coast, and I mean it's all fascinating stuff. I know we've got a couple links too we've given out. We got a couple viewers in the chat too, so a lot of guys are sending in questions. We're certainly going to be doing our research. I know, Joe B, thanks for introducing this, and certainly Clint, to us, our friends, and I've certainly, learned a lot here in this conversation. How about you guys?
I'm sorry it wasn't more conversational. I tend to talk out my ass a lot, but when you're teaching it, it's just sometimes it just you have to cover all the points.
Yeah, I mean we're not too far removed from college was about 5-10 years ago, so I mean just kind of listening to type of lecture hall, I certainly I'm a big learner, and I like to be a sponge and soak things in.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
Well, I mean, don't let my years of sacrifice go to waste. Seriously, learn. Become prepared. The word meek, the meek shall inherit the earth, means the spiritually prepared. And remember that your spirit controls your mind, and your mind controls your body. And the whole idea of incorporation or legalism is to separate your body from your spirit, your moral compass, and put you in a set of strict law, which they call the Roman law, which is what we're under. Contract law, meaning you don't really have a choice. Whereas a free man would have a moral choice at all times. Everything you do will have to be a choice, right? Over here in the legal realm, if you think about it, it's all laid out for you. I mean, you don't make a choice. You're in what the Matrix would refer to as a causality loop, right? You're in causality. This, you vote again, even though you're not actually voting. You're you're just giving consent to the Electoral College to vote for you. You're doing all these things out of cause, never making an actual choice because you can't choose not to follow the immoral or amoral legal law, right? But over here, it's all about choice. So, legal system is like joining the military, right? It's voluntary. But once you join, it doesn't seem voluntary anymore. Because it's once you join, then they can beat the crap out of you. Once they join, then they assign you your rights and they take advantage of those rights and harm you and just cause all kinds of mental and physical abuse. That's basically what citizenship is. So you're giving up your God-given rights and accepting legal rights which are opposed to those God-given rights. So, like I said, that's where we are, and I know it's hard to accept a lot of the stuff. The only reason I know it is because of, like I said, all these years I've been doing this, and I fully invite people to either go to my blog or you download my books, and just learn, just start considering in a real way what is truth and what is not truth, what is God and what is not God. And it's kind of an amazing journey, and eventually you're going to find yourself not able to fit into society at all. It's bad enough being a truther or in the alternative movement, but man, once you really see the bullshit and everything, man, it gets even tougher, and it's kind of an incentive to go, okay, how do I escape this? Because you see the prison for what it is, you don't want to stay in it anymore. So hopefully we'll figure this out in a way that we can franchise it out, meaning do it and then show the example of how to do it, and then everybody else can follow. And one last thing, I found it pretty interesting that there was a report, trends report, going through 2040, and it was the intelligence agencies. And one of the things they said is that people have lost so much faith and trust in government, specifically federal governments, but also local, because local governments are just part of the federal government. They all accept federal funding and therefore are under federal law. People are so, what's the word, disillusioned by the government as it is, that one of the greatest, I wouldn't say it's a fear, but one of the greatest threats to the economy, which is a nonviolent threat, is that people are going to start, and they're predicting that a lot of people are going to start these societies, their own communities, whatever you call it. And I guess what I'm trying to do is say, hey, a lot of those are going to fail. A lot of those are being set up by international organizations, communitarianism, um, intentional societies and stuff. These are all United Nations, traps for people to not get out of the system, but instead to become world citizens instead of United States citizens. And what I really want people to understand is that the founding of this whole thing in the first place was to allow good self-governing men to be able to act in the private without having a nanny state, especially one as tyrannical as we've got. Now, I did a blog where I just basically rewrote the Declaration of Independence. Not like in some official capacity, but just for myself. Like, if I was declaring independence today, what would I say? And I went back and I looked at all the things the king was doing from that corporation overseas, what it was doing to the people here, and almost every case, what the United States is doing to the people in the States and its citizens is far worse than anything that the king was doing to the people who came over here for their independence, for their religious freedom and stuff. So right now we're in a situation where this government is failing, according to all models and all, from Plato's Republic, where it says democracy is the worst place you can be before tyranny. The fourth step in the 5-step process before tyranny hits. Alexander Tytler's thing, which is in my book. All of them pretty much say the same thing. And if you look through history, actually all empires, which is basically what we are, have lasted exactly, give or take 230, 250 years, which is where we are. And so we're in the decline of society. And you're either going to follow that decline into oblivion and into tyranny, a more tyrannic type of slavery and poverty and all that, or you're going to reserve those rights that were given to you by God that are protected by the Constitution, and you're going to do something about it. You're going to make your little paradise. You're going to make your private farm. You're going to do everything you can to support one another through that decline. And really, that's where we're at. And or you can use this and be a bad guy. You can you could probably do prostitution if you want. I imagine there's a lot of things you could do in private that you can't do in public. And if that's your thing, I'm sorry that you found out about it from me. But I think for the rest of us, and I know there's a lot of us out there who still have, who haven't had their minds vaccinated away, their spirit, I think this is I really think after all this time, this is the answer. So, but it requires us to act, to have the knowledge and to act accordingly. So,
Yeah. Well,
how about this one?
Well, that'll be
That's
right
the one.
before. That'll be right after the ad then.
Yeah.
But
All right. Yeah.
But no, for all the folks at home, we will have a couple links, especially to Clint's blog and a couple things like that. Especially at the end of the YouTube video. For some lunch hour reading or what have you, or obviously
So
we
we
have.
got Strawman Story info, right?
It's only that thick.
No, Joe, Joe, you got a hard
Yeah,
copy?
that's right.
Didn't you? Did you get the PDF version or something?
I got a hard copy. It just came in the mail the other day, so
Okay.
I'm gonna dive into that. Yeah, and Clint, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and your years of research. I mean, this kind of stuff, learning about it is not fun. And trailblazing, I can imagine, is even worse. So I
Ooh.
appreciate your work and sharing
Absolutely.
it with us.
Absolutely, man. And it should be said that a spiritual awakening is not what it's chalked up to be. In other words, spiritual awakening means you're seeing everything bad. You're seeing everything wrong with everything. So you're waking up to it and not wanting to be a part of it, not wanting to participate in it, and wanting to fix it, wanting to restore, everything to its proper way. But it's not a pleasant experience to discover the truth and to discover your spirit and have that awakening. There's nothing pleasant about it, and I think that's a good thing, because if it was pleasant, you just get high off it and do nothing. But you're not going to get that high until you fix it. You have this sense of needing to fix what you've discovered is bad, and that's really why why I spend all this time doing this. So again, thank you for the time, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time out of your
Very
day.
much.
That was very nice of you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer, and I'm sure maybe we'll be in talks and what have you. And
Yeah, like I said, I'll post anything that I find out, including my own progress. So if anybody wants to follow that on my blog, and I'll send you links to that too. So
Excellent.
cool beans.
all right,
Very
Clint.
cool.
All right, man.
Thanks so much, Clint.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks a
Joe.
lot. Take care.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Clint.
Take care.
All right.